Hey, how's it going? And today we were going to go a little into the weeds, and I wanted to talk about what Awaitable was, or what my understanding of Awaitable is. And the only place that I was able really to find an example of what Awaitable is and how it works is in the Pizza Pursuit tutorial on line number 43. So here on line 43, you'll see there's an Awaitable, and I was just very curious about what it is and why you'd want to use it. And maybe that's why you don't see it that often, is maybe there's not that much of a need for it. Let's drill into this just a little tiny bit. We have an item spawner reference here, and then we have an event associated with that spawner. So this is stored in an option container. And so this is going to call when it's ready or activated. It's going to call down here to wait for zone completed. This function accepts as a parameter in an awaitable agent type in an option container. I had to write that down because that's hard to say. And I've tested this code, and there's no errors on this. So this up here, which is just your run-of-the-mill device reference and an event associated with it, is seen as awaitable by here. This is an acceptable input. You know how they say credit cards are accepted at certain places? This credit card is accepted here. But this also, and I didn't know this, sends in a payload along with it. And you wouldn't think it would, but it does. One of the main things that Awaitable lets you do is send an event and its payload as a parameter to a function. Now, how often would you need to do that? Maybe not that often. But it's something good to know that you could do if you wanted to. Now, when I tested this, I was able to get the await to pause the code, and I was able to send the payload, but I could not release the hold that await has. So 2 out of 3 I got working. This looks like it would release a hold or break the race, but I couldn't get this to break the race. It did send a payload, and it did pause the code. So I'm not sure. I still have more work to figure out on that. So if you have a need to send an event as a parameter and you want its payload, then you can do this. Now this is, I feel like it's made a little more confusing because it's inside of an option container. And what I wanted to show you is it doesn't need to be. So right now in this scene over here, I have 3 buttons and a button over here and then the verse device. And what happens is if you press these buttons, they print out messages, and then this, and they'll keep doing so. And then if you press this button, it will cancel that ability. And this verse device is just paired to all of those buttons. So there could be 3 different things going on here, and you press this button and it cancels all of them. So, and this isn't using subscriptions or anything like that. Let's take a look at this code then. So we just have our button devices all up here. And then I have an event I created that passes through a logic type. When we press the button, it spawns an event. And then here, this is very similar to what we just saw in the Pizza Pursuit. We have this device reference called stop1, and we have the interacted with event. So this is the same thing as the Pizza Pursuit, except it's not in an option container. And then down here on this function, I have awaitable, not in an option container. It's just awaitable, and it can accept in the agent payload. So what's going to happen is when this is sent, when this is pressed, this is going to trigger down here, and this will be accepted in as a parameter, as an argument. And then once it's set in, then I switch the variable up here, this switch from false to true, and then when it goes to loop through, it comes down here and switches down. And here you'll see this is what I have the deactivated event with payload signal, and I'm sending through a variable switch, right? So I send that through the event, and then it comes here, and then I can change the switch value. So I'm actually sending in a value when I make this call and change the switch, and then it kicks out. It breaks the loop. It's pretty cool. I think this is a pretty cool way to set something up. The main thing is with this awaitable, one of the main purposes of it is when you want to create a function and you want to use an event like this as the input parameter, it'll let you do that. And not only will it let you do that, you can send its payload, whatever the payload is for the event. In this case, the payload is an agent. So we specify here what the payload is, right? It's an agent type coming through. And then down here, what we can do is if we get that payload, here we assign it the name event payload, right? So this becomes an awaitable agent, just like what it says it is. In fact, I think if I hover over this, you'll see the event payload is a waitable agent, right? If we do a dynamic cast, a cast here to the agent type, then it just becomes an agent. So we can take the agent, the payload essentially, out of the awaitable, I don't want to call it container or whatever, but we can take it out of the awaitable designation so it's just the payload, the pure payload. So anyway, that's all I had for today. I hope you found it helpful. Take care, and I'll talk to you next time.